We're delighted to have partnered with NordVPN again for this season. We partnered with them last year, and they are, of course, a supporter of Rangers FC as an official sponsor there. And best of all, we can give you an exclusive NordVPN deal. If you go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, you will get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and one additional month for free. Completely risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee with Nord. And look, I use this product. I would highly recommend it. I used to work in web, so I know how easy it is to steal people's data, especially if you're using a Wi-Fi system that is a shared one, or you're using 4 or 5G, then your details can be out there. With NordVPN, they're absolutely not. And there are other advantages to it as well. You can watch sporting events that maybe aren't being shown in your region. You can purchase flights from different virtual locations, and they do make your flights cheaper. This is very, very useful. What a price is in the UK isn't the same as what a price is in America or a price is on the continent. NordVPN can save you money. You can buy purchasing subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price, and you protect your data while travelling and using public Wi-Fi. I keep coming back to that. Anyone who's at the hassle of a cancelled card will know what I'm talking about. So all you need to do is go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, and you'll get a huge discount off your plan and 1 month additional free, completely risk-free. I urge you to do it. Hello everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and I'm delighted to be joined this week by my friend and fellow Pressbox companion, Stevie Clifford of Four Lads Had a Dream fame. Stephen, good afternoon.
Hello everyone. Hello David, how are you?
I think that's kind of, when you ask Rangers fans at the moment how they're doing, that's the sort of noise you get, followed by a bit of a rant, and understandably so, after Rangers slumped to a really bad defeat in Perth. And Stevie, it's not just losing a game, because that can happen, right? It's what this represents, where it has come from, an ongoing thing. Let's not be coy about this. Rangers fans aren't unhappy at the start of this week because of one football match. It's an overall pattern of things, and I think the fans have made their mind up on the manager, even if the board haven't.
Yeah, I think this is an accumulation. I don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction from yesterday, David. This has been coming. Sadly, we've spoken a lot about performance level not being high enough, and eventually the fear was that the results would run out because you cannot keep up with that level of performance. And yesterday was exactly that. We flatter to deceive a lot of the ball, a lot of supposed attacks, and it's all very predictable. I think every single one of us, after the first 20-25 minutes when we weren't ahead and we hadn't really created very much, could sense or fear the way it was turning out. And sadly, I think it's just, accumulation is where we are in terms of the fans' reaction. Everybody's all fed up now. Everybody's disappointed. Everybody's angry. And we feel like it could have been avoidable. But it's a very long way back now, not only for the manager, but for other members of the club, shall we say.
I've had to go back a long way to find a sort of unanimity of opinion among Rangers fans, because I can't really recall the last time that everyone was so of the same opinion. Now, listen, if people are sitting out there saying I fully back Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, I'm 100% behind it, that's fine. I'm not saying it as everyone. There's been no scientific study done. We can only go on anecdotal evidence, and you and I, because of the sites we run, we speak to a lot of Rangers fans. A lot get in touch with us, and it's hugely, overwhelmingly, that there's no faith in Giovanni Van Bronckhorst to turn this round. There's no belief in this squad that it's capable of producing the sort of form that we need to do it, and therefore that points to the people who are in charge of the recruitment. It points to the board for their spending. So it's not just Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, but as is said time after time and is absolutely true, you can't sack 20 footballers. You can't sack, I saw a few kind of sack the board, you can't sack people who own it. You can buy them out, but you can't sack them. So it's kind of natural, even if it's not wholly fair, that it falls on the manager. And while incidentally, I 100% accept that he's not been given the tools that I think you need to do the job, I still don't think he's getting the best out of the tools that he does have at his disposal, Stevie. It's been a year and I can't tell you Rangers' playing style.
Yeah, I think that's the most damning factor when we talk about Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and the progress that he has made. There hasn't been any, or there's been very little to show on the pitch, David. If we could see it, if we could see patterns of play, if we could see spells in games, if we could see a prolonged run of form, if we could see players getting better under his watch, then we could point to it and say, well, hold on, there's injuries, there's mitigating factors here. We don't think he's been given the best hand, etc. I think that's all can be true, but the issue that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has got is that it's very bleak in terms of what we're seeing and what we're witnessing on a not a sporadic. This isn't like a one-off. It's not like, every 3-4 games we have bad form. This has now been a period of form which has finally caught up with us. And the issue that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst also has is that the things that he said has not helped him. The comments in the Champions League, literally since he said that we cannot compete, David, we have not competed with anyone. So aside of a very good performance last Saturday against Aberdeen, our form since that moment in time has fallen off the page. So there's been a lot of things that people can point to negatively and say Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. But I'm of your opinion as well, and on your point that you made just a couple of minutes ago, that it's been a long time since I've seen the fan base being as unitedly angry at not only the manager, but the players, director of football, boardroom members. It's probably at its most toxic level it's been in several years, certainly since, I think, pre-Steven Gerrard, takeover time, etc. So this is not a good place for anyone to be in. Sadly, I feel it's going to get worse before it gets better. And it's just, I think we all know, you've said this several times and it's correct, we all know how this ends. It's just getting there that's going to be the really difficult part.
Yeah, and I think that's the concern for Rangers fans, is that we're aware of history and we know how this ends, and very rarely does a manager in this position turn it round. You've got the Big Eck 2004, 2005 helicopter Sunday, but again, I think he did have the credit in the bank of a treble and 5 trophies. And I think, people could see that the recruitment had been absolutely terrible the year before. Like Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat, but there are always echoes, or it does rhyme, rather, was how he put it. And I think that there's a lot going on there. Let's go to the match itself. You mentioned the Rangers started off on the front foot, which is what we've asked them to do, something we don't regularly see in the 12 o'clock kickoffs, but they did. St Johnstone happy enough to give Rangers a ball, try and hit the break, and Rangers were dominant that first 20 minutes. But a word that we'll keep coming back to, quality, wasn't there. You're right, we weren't creating a lot of chances. We were getting up the park, we were getting into areas, but we weren't doing much with it. We were getting corners left, right, and centre. Really, I mean, corners. So if you want the corners, this was the game to watch. I think Rangers had something like 10 in that first half alone, ended up with 20. But apart from a Sakala header that came off the bar, which was unlucky, it was a terrific header from Sakala, and a sort of a John Lundstrom shot. It's a decent effort, but you would expect to keep it to save. There wasn't really a lot you could show for that dominance, and I think this is kind of where we begin to get frustrated with the team, and a lot of that falls on someone like Ryan Kent, who I thought was absolutely abysmal yesterday. And the frustration is that, players are on good money, they're earning a lot, and we get the whole, they're not as good as the guys have come up against in Europe. They're better than their direct opponent against St Johnstone and Livingston, but they didn't look as though they were. And that's a fans are going to struggle. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, what do you expect when we play a team with a much higher budget and then play a team with a much lower budget and not be able to deliver anything other than running about.
There was a few moments yesterday where I thought that we were very indecisive, David. There was a couple of through balls that we could have done where Sands and Lundstrom get it centrally and they don't play it. And then the one time he does play it, I thought uncharacteristically Antonio Cholak was a bit hesitant. He maybe should have got that shot away quickly. We don't do that. And, that ruthlessness was lacking. This team are very fragile. We've known that now for years with this group of players, but it's kind of repeating an old conversation that everybody's had, that as soon as there's a wee bit of adversity in this team, as soon as there's a wee setback and the confidence levels drop, they literally fall into a shell. And you see that visibly on the pitch when they don't get a break, when they don't go ahead, when things don't kind of go their way, they overthink things and they overplay. And this is what was happening yesterday. There was times where Ryan Kent should just be floating in or using the overlap and fullback, but he cuts inside, twists about, cuts inside, and by the time he's done all that, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds later, the chance is gone. The defence is set. So if he does get the ball in, it's far too late. There's times where we should be threading it through. Tillman too late on the ball, not quick enough, and then Cholak does get the opportunity and doesn't get the shot away. So it's frustrating because that ruthlessness that you need, that functionality in the team, that flowingness, it's not there. And when it's there, it's lovely to watch. But the problem is, David, that we haven't seen it regularly. And this goes back to the Van Bronckhorst point, and it goes back to yesterday. So 25, 30 minutes in, as the pressure as such begins to peter out, I think it was 10 corners in 10 minutes, which was the record kind of thing that they were talking about. And once that peters out, David, that it's almost inevitable that we run out of ideas and we start to think what we're doing, start to overthink and overplay in the ball. And that's classically what happened as we lead to the first St Johnstone goal. Lundstrom has it and overthinks and overplays and basically ends up doing absolutely nothing. And then there's a catalogue of errors behind it because of the fragility of the player's mental state and, not being sure of what they're doing. And it's more or less that it's, to me, looking at it, I don't know what other people think, but it's more or less looking at it that they're so scared of making mistakes that they don't want to take, leadership or ownership of the ball, and that's what happened defensively.
Yeah, in terms of what we witnessed at that goal, I mean, it is a disaster defensively. People can say what a good strike it was, and it was, but it's not about that. It should never get there. Firstly, you're right, John Lundstrom doesn't make up his mind what to do with the ball, so he takes a bad touch and overruns it, and then bizarrely gets frustrated with himself and just stops. So he doesn't go back the way. James Tavernier has a chance to clear it, and rather than just playing it out, which I know that it's not the way people want to play football these days. Everybody wants to pass, and if you're not playing well, and just do the simple thing, go back to basics. But instead, he elects to try and play it into midfield, dangerous area. If you don't win the ball, which we don't, it goes straight to a St Johnstone player, which means that he's out of position there on the ball. Ben Davies has a chance to clear it, but instead he tries to play a pass, which is never on, and we lose the ball again. And then finally, Ryan Kent doesn't block the shot, doesn't get close to the St Johnstone player to let him have the effort. So there are 4 points of failure in that goal, and that's a lot. To put it the other way, I don't remember many moves we had where there were 4 points of failure in the St Johnstone side, because they're not attempting to do as much as we are attempting to do. We're trying to be a little bit too clever for our own good. And it's great when you're playing well, but we're not. So, yeah, just a disastrous goal. And of course, sucks the life out of the support, because we're going, right, well, here we go again. In the second half, you're expecting a quick start. You need a quick start, and it didn't happen at all. Rangers just did not get going at all in that opening 25 minutes of the second half. St Johnstone we change shape. St Johnstone take advantage with a well-worked goal. Very poor again from our point of view. Borna caught on his heels in the middle of the goal. I mean, how many times are we going to see that? But even so, the ball should never have been allowed to get in the first place. And at 2-0, you felt it was done. We finally get something from one of our corners with Tav's effort, although, again, you would think that the keeper should do better. But even so, we've got 20 minutes to try and turn it round. But I just didn't feel that we were going to, and I'm not sure the players did either. And, of course, they don't. And it's another defeat. Now, we said a few weeks ago that the important thing was we knew we're not playing well and we have a lot of injuries. Get through to the World Cup, take this break, rest and recuperate, chance to bring in new players in January as well. There were 5 matches and they were kind matches, Stephen. They weren't toughies, in all honesty, compared to what they could have been. And since then, we've drawn at home to Livingston and we've lost away to St Johnstone. My concern here is last season, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst oversaw a 12-point swing. He took 12 points less than Celtic did in his time as Rangers manager. This season already, he's taken 7 points less. And that isn't then a one-off or bad luck or injuries. That's a trend. That's what happens. That's normality. That's exactly what has happened, and therefore exactly what you suspect will happen. I've had the argument put to me by people that say, well, Celtic have been exceptionally consistent, and that's true. And wouldn't it be great if they weren't? But they are. So that means we have to be. I don't think you can get away with saying, oh, well, they're doing really well and we can't keep up with them. It's your job as Rangers manager to not only keep up with them, but to beat them. And again, while I accept that there are issues, I look at that side and I don't see a shape, I don't see a philosophy, I don't see a style of play. We rely on basically one of our key players will do something and will do enough and will create something for somebody, but there's no plan in place for that to happen. And then you get a day like yesterday when your star players don't do something. That's over and above the defence, which, while I accept, has been very unlucky with injuries as a bomb scare. And then lastly, on the injuries point, again, yes, unlucky with injuries. I accept that. And I accept that a lot of those players played a lot of games last season, and there is it's a condensed season. They played a hell of a lot of games in a short space of time. But Sakala picks up a muscle injury yesterday. He hasn't played a lot of football. So it can't be that. You can't say that he's been a regular because he hasn't. Is there more to it? Are they fit enough? Are they fit enough for the rigours of what we knew was going to be a condensed season? Hello everyone, it's David here, and I would like to take a minute out of the show to talk to you about your testicles. Actually, I wouldn't, but I have to. They make me do it. It's my own fault. I agreed to do this, but even so, it's still not something that I do with relish. But one thing we do all relish is our testicles. And I think it's fair to say that we've all spent a long time of our lives with our hands on them. Be honest. Let's not kid ourselves here. Al Bundy spoke for all of us when he sat there on his couch. And you want them in pretty good shape. You want them in good nick. And you don't want to be nicking them when you're out there with a razor blade. This is a highly sensitive area. You can't be just going on there with razor blades and shit. You seen the mess I make of my neck? Oh my God. So no danger. What you want to do is get a Manscaped kit, because they are the number one in the sort of perverted field of ball shaving. They're the boys, right? They're the boys for your balls. So I should tell them that. They should use that. They come up with loads of great scripts, by the way, and I just ignore them because, I still want to get into heaven, and I need to have some sort of defence when I stand there at the pearly gates and they say, you're a ball shaving guy, and I'll go, got to make a living. Anyway, Christmas is coming, and why not surprise a friend? I know that I, for one, would be taken aback if somebody said to me, especially a male friend, said, there you go, what about your buzz? So it would be novel. Great secret Santa gift. You strike me as a man with particularly hirsute testicles. Why not take this? So you can get 20% off and free shipping if you use the code RANGERS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. So be thankful this holiday season, because it's the best gift of all from Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. And that's another one done. Way, take care. Bye-bye.
No, I don't think they are. But I'm gonna slightly go back, David, to yesterday's game again, and I would love the opinion of people here when I say this. And this is only me, David, and I'm not tactics. I'm not tactics talk with Adam. I'm not anything like that. I'm a normal guy who sits and watches it the same as everybody else. I thought his substitutions yesterday were absolute lunacy. With 60 minutes on the clock, we were 1-0. It needed change, right? It needed it. That's absolutely fine. But he took off our centre half, Ben Davis, who was not playing well, but he just left it. So we effectively went with King at centre half, who's an 18-year-old boy who's having a difficult time because he's basically been fed to the wolves, and then two wing backs who don't cover very well and don't defend very well at all anyway. And then we tried to get by with that, and within 2 minutes, our centre back gets turned on the defence. It crosses it in, and lo and behold, our fullback isn't covering. That to me isn't a man that knows what he's doing. Because if I can see that and everybody else knows it, and I'm not a tactical wizard or anything like that, David, I'm just watching and I'm just a normal bloke in terms of what I see. St Johnstone played two up at all times. They played Stevie May and they played Nicky Clark. And to me, it just played straight into their hands. And within 2 minutes, we found ourselves from a throw-in 2-0 down after 62 minutes. And I'm not saying we could have came back into it. That is a substitution that gets made 5 minutes from the end where you're chasing the game and you throw everything at it. We made that change with half an hour to go. And the more I think about Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and wild tactical selections and team selections and things like that, it just seems to me like he's thrown things at the wall and hoping it sticks. Those substitutions yesterday and that decision at that point in the game for me is madness. And it cost us. Now, I'm not saying that we could have come back at 1-0, David, but the chances are with half an hour left, we could have maybe equalised. I'm not saying we'd have won it, but going 2-0 down at that team, what's the bigger gamble? Changing the substitutions or keeping it the way it is at the time and, seeing what we can do. He effectively handed them an opportunity which took them 2 minutes to take. And I just think that, even if you had Goldson or somebody back there, fine. But you've got a very young boy, the only centre half left, two fullbacks that don't cover well. I thought that was madness, David. He didn't tuck Sands in, didn't even bring Lundstrom back. Anything like that would have helped. He didn't do anything. He effectively chucked on Scott Arfield, moved Morelos up front, and within 2 minutes we were done and dusted in that game. And I know it seems like people will say, Stevie, you've got a real bee in your bonnet about Van Bronckhorst, you don't rate him, etc., etc. See, beside all that, David, I don't know what your thoughts on that and the wider public's thought and the guys that are listening on this podcast think of that, but I thought that was madness.
Pressure does odd things to people. We tend to judge footballers and football managers as almost these two-dimensional characters that are not real human beings, and they are, and they have their foibles and they have their bad decisions and pressure making them not think straight, same as the rest of us do. And to me, that was exactly, you used a phrase there, just chucking stuff and hoping something would stick. And that's exactly what that looked like to me yesterday. And I think we've seen it in team selections recently. Sakala can't get a game, suddenly he comes in for the Champions League. Then Matondo's back from nowhere, suddenly he's in. It's just trying to get something, anything to go, but there's no structure to that. There's no plan to that. It's just hope. It's just hope. And you're absolutely right. I really felt for Leon King yesterday. Said this on our post match because he was left as, let's face it, the defence, 18 years old, and as you say, he's made a few errors. Now, people say, "Oh, he's not good enough." I have a problem with, because 18-year-olds make mistakes when they come into the first team. Unless we are never going to bring through a youngster, Stevie, if they have to be through and be the finished article as soon as they get in the team. We'll never bring a single one through because it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere. Even the best young players make mistakes and have tough matches. So I think he's doing as well as can be expected given the circumstances. But he was in a hiding to nothing there. I don't think Arfield or Morelos touched the ball in that half an hour because I don't think they knew exactly where they were supposed to be playing themselves.
Yeah, I think that's another massive point. It's not like the changes you make It's not like there's a rush to get these guys on because they're capable of being the massive game changers. This goes back to points that we made at the very first 5 minutes where we don't see structure, we don't see plan, we don't see tactics. This is like that moment for me basically summed up where we are exactly under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. I, I don't want it to be a situation where I'm picking, and I'm highlighting and it sounds like I've got an agenda and things like that. I just thought it was madness, David, to make such a substitution with 30 minutes to go. And as you said, like this is an 18-year-old boy basically left in defence, and they kept two up front. It's not against one. See if it was one as SPL teams normally play, I could kind of get there and say, look, he's thrown the dice and gambled, but it's a senseless gamble, and it's a gamble that literally took 2 minutes to catch us, and then he moves somebody back, and I just think it's lunacy for me, and that's where we are with him, and yeah, look, people might say, look, Stevie had to gamble, and yes, I get that, not 30 minutes to go, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to go, I fully understand that you take that gamble, and I think that, I just think that it's, what's the word I'm looking for, David, that this is exactly where we are at this point. I don't think he has a full grasp of not what's not needed, but I don't think he knows how to deliver it. And I think
Yeah.
moments like that are key to me. I just cannot fathom the reasoning or thinking behind that. And even at the time, I was sitting going, "This is madness. This change."
Pressure leads to panic, mate.
Yeah,
That's...
when it doesn't, when I don't see him bring anyone back and keeping the shape and stuff like that, I'm just like, what are they doing? And Alfie, you know, I'm not one to say this because people will go, again, you've got issues, but Alfredo Morelos was making strange runs. I think Ali said it. We don't need you out on the wing. We need you in the middle. And he was making runs that didn't really make sense, and he didn't really. I'm not saying he didn't know where he was to be, but
I don't think he did. I'll go back to that. I don't think, because there was no defined shape. We had a kind of three at the back, but two of them are pushing on. So then you've got still the three in midfield and effectively four up front, and there's no space. And it didn't work. You can't say it worked because it didn't work. It wasn't like we were creating chance after chance. It didn't work. It was a shapeless mess, and unfortunately, the phrase "shapeless mess" is one that's been used a few times this season, because we have a tendency to break down into this morass, and it is. I just don't see it changing, because, as happens with managers, if they knew how to change it, then they would have done. And that's what always happens. Sometimes you run out of ideas for what you can get out of a certain group of players. Now, this is not, incidentally, to say that this is a wonderful group of players, that that are being horribly mismanaged. This squad quite clearly hasn't been up to the rigours, hasn't been up to what we need it to do, and there's been a distinct lack of quality. Some of the existing players are clearly just no longer capable of doing big roles in the team, yet are being asked to do that. Some of the bigger names and the higher earners just haven't delivered at all this season for whatever reason. And I think on top of that, yeah, I remember something. We did a live show with Kevin Thompson. You were there, and Kev said something that's always stuck with me. He said, footballers will look for an excuse, any excuse, because it's never their fault. So it's easy for a player to say, oh, it's the manager, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. But as you say, that doesn't mean that you should know that you need to get your cross away earlier, get your shot away a bit quicker, or track back, or get a block in. And it gets worse and worse, and I think that's what we're seeing. And we're also seeing, as we saw yesterday from St Johnstone, teams quite fancy their chances against us, because they know if we defend solidly, just all do our jobs, make it difficult, then they don't really have the creativity to hurt us, and we will get an opportunity, and their defence isn't particularly strong, so we'll get an opportunity, and if we take that, that sets the pressure up. And when teams get like that, it makes your games a lot more difficult, because teams go into it thinking, we can really do it, and it gives them the extra 10% in their legs, and we saw that against Livy, and we saw that yesterday.
yeah, we did, and It's the old saying, isn't it? You can smell blood, and unfortunately, when you play Rangers at this very moment in time, you smell blood. And we can understand it from a point of view that teams maybe look and go, there's 10 players out of this squad, we've got a real good chance, etc., etc. But I also think it's because teams generally will look at it and say they are not playing well, which goes back to, again, what we said right at the very start, David, in terms of this performance level and what's going on. So it all kind of, like, every comment that we make and everything we say and stuff like that, it all goes back to the original point of, where's this squad going? What's the patterns of play? What's their style? How do they perform? Etc. Etc. And we don't see it. Now, if we don't see it, what's the opposition seeing? Because I know that the likes of David Martindale, for example, what he sat and said to us in the press conference, he knew that Rangers would revert to type. Now, if he can see that, and for those that missed that in the press conference, David, we were there. He said that we knew that if we defended solidly, they would be forced to cross it in, and we can defend that all day. That's more or less the gist of it, if I remember.
Yeah, he said if we blocked the centre and had our centre backs in position at the back, that Rangers would fall into the trap because it was difficult to play through. They would fall into the trap of crossing it from deep. I think 73 crosses that day.
Yeah, so it goes back to your point, like, in terms of teams smelling blood and being able to set up and fancying having a go right now. It's predictable. There's not much else that we can do. And it looks like, from the outside in, it looks like we've ran out of ideas, not only on the bench, but also as players. And I've got a lot of respect for KT and what he says about football. And the problem is, I look at it, when you hear stuff like that, you look at our squad and you think at the moment there is too many of them taking the way out or not applying themselves. And we spoke at the very start, this isn't all Van Bronckhorst, it isn't all on him. There's much wider things going, and it would be remiss of us, certainly of me, not to say that this squad needs ripped up. But we've said that even when the going was good, even when they just won the championship, we said now's the time. Fix the squad. There's urgent positions that need attended to. We're now 18 months on and they haven't done it, and it's no surprise that we sit where we are, because it's not an I told you so thing. Steven Gerrard told us back in 2019 that we needed new midfielders, and here we are 2022 and we've still not done anything about it, and we're wondering why guys like David Martindale are saying that if we stop the middle they won't do very much else. And that's no disrespect to Davey, by the way. He's a very likeable guy and a very astute coach. My point is wider in terms of teams know what we're doing and how we're going to go about it. So that's David. I mean,
it's legit.
I hate being negative. I hate coming back to it and saying it's all doom and gloom. But if people are listening to this and hoping we're going to say, well, this can happen, that can happen, I don't think it can happen under this current regime and under this current squad unless there's a jolt from somewhere.
No, and I think that these are issues that have been ongoing, as you've mentioned. They are crying out for midfielders has been something that has been going on for a while now. It's not new. It's not new on here. It's not new from our listeners. It's not new on the message boards or on the social media, and it just hasn't been addressed. We've still having to go with the 2018 midfield. That is a fact. There's no getting away from it. That is exactly the situation we find ourselves in, and therefore somebody at Rangers is responsible for that, whether or not they want to admit it. And I think that we tend to look at director of football because it falls under his remit. So if it's not his remit, then he made a major tactical error, Ross Wilson, in making sure he was associated with every new signing, where he's there in the statement, he's there in the photographs. So if it's not his remit, then whose is it, and why is it not worked out at all? And we have this uneven squad. We have an unbalanced squad in terms of positions, and we have an old squad, and that's part of the problem. We've allowed key assets to run down their contracts, and they're going to leave for free. To be honest, with the likes of Kent Morelos right now, you're sitting going, even if they do want to stay, do we really want to commit to 4 years on 40 grand a week for these guys? Are we going to get our money's worth out of that? Probably not. And I think next summer, we're going to have, as many as 10 out and as many as 10 in, because as you said, the squad needs rebuilt. Now, one of the things that after every defeat, you and I both get all social media, fan media, get it on social media, which is you don't ask the tough questions. And generally what we've found the last few weeks, when we say to people, what would you like to ask? And they go this, and we say, well, we have asked that. And they go, well, I don't listen to all the press conferences, he's really boring. Which, is fair enough, but it's a bit unfair to get on to us. But I wondered about that. Why are some people so fixated on that? As if anything you or I ask, or anyone asks, is liable to change anything that happens on the pitch. And I think I've got it now. And that's because they think that that's the only way that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is going to find out that we're unhappy. That's the only time that, unless it's said directly to him in a press conference, which incidentally isn't what a press conference is for. You're not invited to sit and give a lecture. That's not the point. You're there to ask a question. But of course he does. He's not stupid. He knows the side's been booed off the park 3 times in the past 3 weeks. He knows fans are unhappy. He meets people in and around Glasgow. The board are aware that everyone's unhappy. So it's not that they don't know. If you're clinging to this, it reminds me of the old model of, if we can just get to the king and let him know, revolutionary France, and let him know that we're upset, he'll fix it. They know you're upset. So if that's a comfort blanket that you're holding on to, of, well, they just don't know or they would fix it, they do know.
Yeah,
Why
and
Rangers haven't moved on getting rid of Giovanni van Bronckhorst is they don't want to get rid of Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Don't look for a deeper explanation. That's it. Now, you can then break it down a wee bit further and say what the reasons for them not wanting it. But the reason that Gio is still there as manager, the reason Ross Wilson is still there as director of football, is that the board want them to still be there. Cost might be an issue with Gio. The board might be because we haven't been spending a hell of a lot of money, and if we're going to have to pay, and I don't know, I'm just using this as a baseline figure, but I imagine I won't be too far wrong. If we're having to spend 5-6 million quid to get rid of Gio and his staff, they'll feel that that's money that could be spent on the first team squad, which is correct. But there does come a point where the atmosphere is so poisoned, Stevie, you can't afford not to make that change. And I think we're getting very, very close to that.
Yeah, something I was going to say there, David. Only probably 3 weeks ago, David, you sat next to me in the press conference, and I asked Giovanni van Bronckhorst if he understands the fans' frustration and what does he say in retaliation to that. And he very bluntly and quickly almost cut me off. And it wasn't impolite. He just says, of course I understand. I played for some massive clubs. I played in the World Cup final. So, it's not that we're not asking. And it's not that he doesn't understand, but I do understand that point. I think it's a very valid one in terms of trying to, perhaps the other issue is because there's no, at the moment, there's no vibrant supporters group, there's no vibrant kind of, organisation where they can come to, that people think that the only way that we can kind of vent our frustrations is by saying to us, because of our access. And I understand that more than I did last week. I think that's fair to say. I had a discussion with somebody yesterday, and he was like, well, the reason that we come to you guys and the reason we say this, it might not be fair, it might not be correct, is because you're the only people there that are able to kind of feedback. And I've tried to say, well, 4 lads and hat in hand, we're not, elected people. We don't speak for the for the fans. I wouldn't want to try and do that. But I understand that viewpoint more than I did, perhaps a couple of days ago. But I think it's valid in terms of, but there's also, I understand when people say they don't listen to him, but at the same time, we are asking what you're asking. It's just we maybe don't get the right answers either. So
We can't change the answer, and I found that somebody actually said that to me. He said,
so.
yeah, you asked him this, and he said something bland. I was like, well, yes, he does that. He's a media trained professional. He's not going. If you're wanting him to come out and say, yeah, we're rotten, and it's all shite, and Ross Wilson signed some right shite hawks, and I'm stuck with him, he's not going to do that. So I get it though. I think that there is an element of it lets you hold on to hope. It just means that they can't know how unhappy we are. And if we can only just get that across to them, then they'll know. They do know. The stadium tells them that. The away support tells them that. They know. Look at Australia. They know. And in terms of, when we as fan media put points to them, just because we don't do it publicly doesn't mean we don't do it. That's all I'll say on that one.
Yeah.
We do it a lot, trust me. But we do it constructively. So they know how unhappy the fans are. There's been no move. And the noises coming out of Rangers is there was no board meeting, no crisis talks, anything like that, any of the old tabloid cliches, none of that. Nothing's changed. It's business as usual. Now, I think that their hope is that they can get through these next two games, get 6 points, and then we've got the World Cup, and hopefully, players back, all the stuff that has been said. I think that's the hope, which is all right, but it's a gamble. And if we don't pick up 3 points at Ibrox on Wednesday, if we don't pick up 3 points in Paisley against two sides who, as we mentioned, will be bang up for it and feeling they can definitely get something here, then where do you go from there? If it gets to 9, 10, 11 points, where do you go from there, Stevie? It becomes untenable. And surely you have to act at that point to give the new manager the full time of the World Cup to make a decision. We're also told, incidentally, that there's always a contingency plan. We were told that when Gerrard left, that there's always a contingency plan. So surely there's a contingency plan.
Yeah, well, you would like to think a lot of buzzwords were used around the time of progression planning and things like that. The fact of the matter is, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst applied for the Rangers job. He really wanted it, so he more or less landed on the laps of the club. I'm not going to say now that I didn't want him, because that's not true. I thought he was the best candidate for the job, but it hasn't worked out. And very early on, David, you and I spoke in January about worrying about whether it was the right thing. But in terms of where the club go from now, I think the issue is that there's no definitive leadership within the club. There's nobody, there isn't one figure, there's not one person willing to go, right, this is on the slide, it's not going well. To me, it doesn't matter if it's 7, 9 or 11. It doesn't really matter. It's still the same end result in terms of where we will be at the end of the week. Two results against these teams won't make the faintest bit of difference, because what's going to happen now, David, is that, we could win the next two games. We could come back from the break and win against Aberdeen and then draw at Ross County. And as soon as that happens, it'll happen all over again. The fans have lost trust. The noises will come out. The talk of protest will come, and eventually, it's now a circle. It's too entrenched now. And this is what I said last week to you, and I said it to people as well, that we went into that Champions League game against Ajax with 10 players out. Completely unsustainable. 7 of them were first team starters, but there's no balance now. There's nobody saying, right, come on, it was Ajax, first very full team, we're decimated. It's just gone now. You know what I mean? There's no balance there. There's nobody saying it's entrenched. Fans want change, and the only way this is going to go now is that, God forbid, if we don't get the right results the next couple of games, it'll go toxic. We saw a small insight into yesterday, and it was the supporters having their say. That it'll only get more graphic, if that's the right word, in terms of where we go, and it'll force change either imminently or they'll drag their heels and eventually do it. But either way, it would take a monumental turnaround for Van Bronckhorst to win the fans back. But I was saying that at 2 points behind 5 weeks ago after the Liverpool game. So nothing's changed in that regard. And to me, it doesn't really matter what happens in the next couple of games, David. The decision has to be made, because the feeling around the club, the feeling in the fan base, the feeling in the stands isn't good. We heard it yesterday, spoke to people that were there yesterday. We know how toxic it was. We know what happened after the game. It's only going to put a plaster over what needs, a very urgent surgery, if that's the right terminology for people, I'm not sure. I know what I'm trying to say, David.
No, it's when, not if. And the
Yeah,
issue that you have is the fans have made up their mind on Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, right? Now, you can think that that's unfair if you're the Rangers board. You can say, oh, what about this? What about that? It doesn't matter. They've made up their mind. And when they've made up their mind, it's virtually impossible. I can't think of any Rangers manager who's came back when that's been the case. To go right back to the start, as we were talking about at the start, it's not one or two. It's not even 50%. It's pretty much everybody. And they've made up their mind that this guy just doesn't have it. So, short of winning every game and winning the treble, nothing's going to persuade them that that's not the case. And it means that the outside environment, because nothing happens in a vacuum, makes it more difficult for them to do that, because the fans are waiting for something to go wrong because they don't rate the manager. It's a vicious circle, and you have to make that change. And I think that's probably the biggest frustration for us as fans, and for the fans that I'm friendly with, or the guys I work with or whatever, that they will have to do this. It's not going to turn round. You will have to sack him. He's not going to be the manager in 2 years' time. So you might as well get it done when you'll get a wee bit of credit for it, although it won't wash away the things you've done wrong. But even so, and it gives you the best chance of a recovery. It feels to me like they're holding on and just hoping. There's a great old story, Stevie, right, about a guy. It's a Russian story about the Tsar. He goes to the Tsar and he borrows money from him for food for his family. And he gets it on the grounds that he promises that in 30 days he'll come back and he'll make a dog talk. And his wife says to him, why did you do that? He says, well, you never know. Anything could happen. The Tsar could be ill. He's a busy man. He could forget. Or who knows, the dog might talk. Well, right now, the Rangers board are going week to week hoping that the dog talks. It's not going to talk.
Yeah. I can't, I can't say anything differently. It's spot on to me. I don't want to be so entrenched that I block everything off and I come across it. Look, we want Giovanni Van Bronckhorst to succeed. We want this board to succeed. We want things to be... I want to come on here and have a laugh and talk about what a great performance yesterday was. We've got our show on Friday night and have a laugh and be giggling and looking forward to what, a good World Cup break and everything else. It's, I I don't want this, and we've always been ultra positive people, David, in terms of going to games and being excited and enjoying each other company, match days, blah, 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 blah. That's all correct. But I'm not going to sit here and try and sugarcoat what I think is almost inevitable. And that story there and the analogy that it brings is sadly completely spot on. I feel that they're holding out for a miracle. Why they're doing that, I don't know. But in all my times, David, of kind of being a Rangers fan and 39 years old now, I've never really seen a Rangers board be proactive in terms of doing stuff on the back of when we think. It's always at the point of, well, it's far too late. Alex McLeish being the prime candidate, it's always allowed to labour on. And we spoke about this weeks and weeks and weeks ago on this podcast in terms of where it would go. So, sadly, I agree with it. I mean, I think that I agree with exactly what you said in terms of I think they'll just try and waddle through and to the point where it's completely, it doesn't matter if it's 1 year, 2 year, whatever. I don't think it'll go on that long. That's not what I'm saying. But they are just holding out hope more than what's right in front of their nose, sadly. And what's going to happen, though, the problem that they've got, and they might not realise, and they have been warned, but I doubt they'll listen, is that I think the fan base has changed in terms of that might have worked under Steven Gerrard. I don't think that works here. I don't think that approach works. I think one more result and people will start going to the front door. I don't think we're far away from that. It might not be in terms of riots or that. That's not what I'm saying. But people will start voicing dissent. Chants will start. Banners will come. And I don't think that's far away. And that's the position I think we are. The board can hang on and hope for a miracle, but I don't think they realise just how toxic it is amongst the support at this moment. So it's almost, it's disappointing. It's more than disappointing to be sitting here, David, and not being able to offer any other counter argument to it or any spin of positivity. This ends the way it ends. It's just a matter of when it does. And I don't think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst can change it. I don't think he can offer anything different. I don't think he can suddenly implement a style that suddenly clicks into place. To go back to an earlier question that we never really went back to, which was my fault because I waffled on about something else, I don't think this squad looks fit, mate. I think that's correct. I think psychologically as well, it doesn't look, mentally, I don't think they're on point in terms of belief, in terms of what they think that they can do, So it's some people might say I'm entrenched, and I really don't want to come across that way, but I just don't see any way out of this current predicament under this leadership. And that's more than Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, David. So there's a big turnaround job here, and the board need to lead. The position of chairman isn't just a position, it needs to be leading. We need to be having a vocal board, and it can't continue in silence. They either publicly back him and we all get on with it, like it or lump it, or they make the decision. Either way, that leadership needs to come.
Yeah, unfortunately, hope isn't a strategy. And that appears to be what we're doing on a kind of month-to-month, week-to-week basis. Let's just get through to this. Let's just get through to then. Let's just get through to then. You can't keep doing that. Eventually, it'll catch up with you, and it's caught up with us. Right, folks, thank you very, very much for joining myself and Stevie. Adam will be back with Heart and Hand Extra later in the week, our other free show of the week, and when he will go through what happened on Wednesday against Hearts and look ahead to the St Mirren game at the weekend. I look forward to seeing those of you who are going to the Four Lads Had a Dream live show at the Loudon Tavern on Friday night. Stevie has very kindly invited myself, along with Josh Barry from the Rangers Review, to go and share our opinions. That's going to be a right laugh, eh?
Oh, mate, honestly, it will be fun. It
will, actually.
I can't raffle half the stuff I was going to, David. Unfortunately, you know that I had a load of really good stuff, signed products and things that we had done recent going on, make that really differently. And not only that, I've invited probably the best looking Rangers social media guy going
Correct.
At the moment in Joshua Barry. So I'm not standing next to him, Dave. I've been
I'm not.
Mate, I've been comfort eating during all this, like Giovanni Van Bronckhorst stuff. So
you're the host. You need to be in the middle. That's the rules. That's the law. So I'm as far away from Josh as I can possibly get. He's a handsome wee bugger. But no, we'll have a laugh, and that's it. That's the main thing, because at the end of the day, we're still Rangers fans, and it's still, I'd rather be a Rangers fan than be anything else. So there's still that. But yeah, look, the situation isn't irretrievable. Even at 7 points, probably might be a bit too much, but you got to give yourself the maximum opportunity, Stevie, and that's why the fans are calling for action. Nobody knows this club better than Rangers fans. We know what works, we know how it works, and we know what history has taught us, and we've learned those lessons. Sometimes it pays. You can't listen to Rangers fans or fans of every club on every decision, but see, when it comes to stuff like this, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, sadly, and I think if anything, the last decade has shown Rangers fans to be the ones that have kind of led and gone with their own club and kind of forced change where necessary. I am sorry to everyone that's listened if this has been, a negative kind of show and impacted, but it's there, it's where we are, unfortunately, and I don't feel like we can sugarcoat what's right in front of us. I appreciate that everybody might not feel the same, absolutely, and I hope that in a couple of months' time we're laughing at this and saying, by God, Stevie, you were so wrong, because that would mean Rangers are back and Rangers are winning, and that is ultimately all I want, is to see a successful Rangers team and to be able to enjoy and have a laugh and have a good time. Let's hope it gets back to that, David.
Absolutely right. Thanks, our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Miles. And I will speak to you all again next Monday. Until then, let's hope Rangers are picking up the pace a bit. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.